All right. So talk to me a little bit about fit testing. This is a question that often comes up. What's the difference between qualitative and quantitative, and when would each, serve the best purpose?
Now, I'll come out up front and say that I'm a little bit biased towards the quantitative solution because we've got one of the best out there. But from my standpoint, what's truly important is making sure that fit testing has been done, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. Now, when we're talking about qualitative fit test, we're talking about something that is subjective. It's
Right.
not objective, right? A quantitative fit test is extremely objective. It's scientific. There is some form of measurement, right? So, short story, there are clients out there that love to tell me these stories about their qualitative fit testing nightmares. You get these folks that have been in industry for decades and decades, that have been chain smoking ever since they could, maybe shouldn't have been. And these folks can't taste their supper, let alone detect an irritant, right?
Right.
So we've actually had clients come out and say, there's no way I can't fit test so-and-so because they can't pick up the particular challenge agent. So this creates a problem when it comes to qualitative as well. And I've seen it in industry, and it upsets me greatly, is when people ask me, hey, do you have any smoke tubes? Yes, I can supply you with smoke tubes, but what are we doing? Well, we're just going to do a smoke tube just to try and get a fit, because we know it won't pass on a quantitative device.
That's concerning. If you're doing it because you don't think it'll pass over here, then it's probably shouldn't pass up anywhere.
So let's not play one against the other. But what we can say about qualitative is it has its place. It's great for group settings, and it's fairly inexpensive. There isn't much in the way of cost to entry as per se, right? But if you want the best solution, one that removes a lot of the liability from you, you're looking at something that is quantitative. In particular, the solution that we have access to, the TSI port account, is a great solution. It does all the deciding for you. There's no manipulation. There is no guesswork. It's just pass or fail. And that's the way it can be.
Is it, better to use one or the other in terms of different types of exposures and hazards? So would you recommend qualitative for one type of exposure versus quantitative for a different type of exposure?
From my vantage point, you do need to employ the quantitative anytime you're getting into a full face mask or an SPBA. So that's not me saying it, that's CSA. Okay. So bear in mind that when you're fit testing an N95 or a half mask, you're okay doing a qualitative measure. But according to CSA, you absolutely have to use a quantitative device on a full face mask. That's assuming that you want the full protection factor that it offers, right? Right.
Yeah, the reason why that kind of question came up for me, I remember, again, kind of hearkening back to the beginning of the pandemic when we were doing all those fit tests for people using N95s. And we were doing, we do quantitative fit testing here. We don't even have the qualitative equipment on site. So we were doing quantitative, and a lot of people felt like that was overkill on an N95, for what those people were using it for. Again, talking about dentists and things like that. From our perspective, again, we like to go with the most objective test possible, taking some of that guesswork out. But yeah, that was kind of the thought behind my question was, is doing a quantitative fit test on an N95 a bit of overkill, or does that make sense?
Well, and I love that question because it does look like it's overkill if you're the outside looking in, right? If you don't understand the technology involved. I can tell you from my work with various government bodies using that port account solution that it's a saving grace to have that level of sophistication. So perfect example is you take a mask that you're not normally fit on, you don't normally wear, and you run it through the real-time fit test solution through TSI port account.
Yep.
And you're sitting there and you're manipulating the nose piece and making sure that everything is just so, because you can see right there on the graph whether or not you're going to pass or fail.
Right.
Which is huge because by the time you get out your smoke and you've already been exposed to it and you're hacking and coughing, or you can taste the bitter in your bitter fit test solution, it's too late. You've already failed, right? So from my perspective and many OHS professionals, it's just best to go with that quantitative solution because there's no guesswork. You can easily see what's happening and you can determine the efficacy of your fit.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, that was a great overview of respiratory PPE and testing. Any final thoughts that you want to leave our viewers with in regards to this topic?
I think the biggest thing is making sure that we have our respiratory code of practice ready to go in writing. So when you have a respiratory code of practice, make sure it's in writing. Make sure that you are explaining the selection, your maintenance protocols, use of respiratory equipment when and where it's needed. This needs to be accessible for the workers and needs to be reevaluated. So if there's any potential for anyone to be exposed to those hazards we were talking about before, whether it's particulate, in particular, silica, those kinds of things, gases, vapors. I mean, when it comes to IDLH environments where you have immediate hazards, it's probably pretty intuitive at times, but really, it's the nuisance stuff that adds up. It builds, it creates the occupational diseases that a lot of us simply don't want to deal with when we're older and we put our time in.
Awesome. And I mean, as always, the OHS Acton Code is a great place to go if you need information about respiratory codes of practice. It lays out kind of what the key components are. And as Tyler mentioned in our noise segment here, there are lots of CRSPs, people in this industry, industrial hygienists, who can help with those types of things if you need it.
Indeed.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Tyler. Again, a wealth of information about occupational health and safety topics and technical information. Thank you for joining us, and everybody else, stay tuned. We're going to have some more upcoming conversations with Tyler about air quality.